The quantum blade stopped 3 centimeters from the Queen's throat. Kale's hand trembled as he held the diplomatic satchel, watching the Valkyrie assassin freeze mid-strike. The royal chamber's gravity stabilizers flickered. Around him, crystalline guards materialized from walls he'd thought were solid, their bodies refracting light into weapons he couldn't name. He'd delivered trade documents to alien courts before, but never while someone was trying to kill the recipient. Hold. The Queen's voice carried harmonics that made his bones ache. She didn't move. The blade's edge split individual atoms near her scaled throat, creating a soft hiss. Human. Your papers. Kale's fingers felt numb. He was 24, trained as a courier for the Terran Diplomatic Corps, and absolutely not prepared for this. Treaty ratification. The mining rights agreement. Your Radiance requested... not those. Her triple-jointed hand extended. Black talons caught the light. The marriage contract. The assassin's blade withdrew 1 centimeter. Azara, you can't... My name, the Queen said, still not looking at the would-be killer, is not for your mouth, cousin. He'd carried dozens of documents in the satchel, all encrypted, all sealed. His handler had mentioned something about ceremonial additions to the mining treaty, but his hands moved through the papers. There. A scroll he hadn't noticed before, bound in fiber that felt almost organic. Read the terms, Queen Azara commanded, aloud. The assassin shifted. Kale saw her clearly now. Same species as the Queen, but smaller, sleeker. The quantum blade's hum changed pitch. One of the crystalline guards moved fractionally closer. Kale broke the seal. The scroll's text glowed. In accordance with the 7th Accord of the Valkyrie Ascendancy, to solidify peace between... His throat went dry. Between Earth and the Ascendancy, Queen Azara of the Third Radiance shall take as royal consort. He looked up. This says me, Kale Brennan Chen, bonded by treaty, married within 7 planetary rotations of document delivery. His voice cracked. Failure to comply voids all economic agreements and reinstates previous territorial conflicts. The assassin laughed, sharp and bitter. You'd bind yourself to a human? They live barely a 10th our span. He'll be dust before you reach your 2nd century. Irrelevant. Azara's tail, thick as Kale's torso, swept across the floor. The assassin had to jump. The council requires an alliance marriage. They didn't specify the species. They'll invalidate it. Call you mad. The law is the law. Now Azara moved, turning to face her attacker. The blade followed but kept its distance. You wanted the throne, Savara. You allied with the war faction? This prevents them. A human consort ties Earth's defensive fleet to our border disputes. I didn't agree to this. Your government did. Check the signature. He found it. Ambassador Wei's seal, genuine. His own personnel file number. 7 rotations. 6 days. They'd sold him like cargo. Savara's blade extended again. 1 stroke. The human dies. No marriage. No treaty. And 17 crystalline guards execute you before his body cools. Azara stepped forward into the blade's range. Do it. Prove you're willing to watch our people return to war over pride. The blade trembled. Kale saw something in Savara's expression he recognized. Desperation. She was trapped, too. There's another option, he heard himself say. Both Valkyrie turned. His diplomatic training kicked in, the same instinct that had talked him through gang territories on Earth, through corporate negotiations on Mars. What if the marriage is real? Elaborate. Azara's eyes, all 3 of them, fixed on him. Your cousin wants you to refuse? The war faction wants you isolated? His mind worked faster. But if I'm genuinely your consort, not a political prisoner, Earth's fleet integration looks like partnership. The Council can't call it coercion without insulting Earth. Savara lowered the blade slightly. You'd pretend to love her? No pretending needed? The words left his mouth before his brain caught up. Both aliens stared. I've studied Valkyrie culture for 6 years. Read every text your people shared with Earth archives. I requested this assignment specifically. His face heated. I saw your coronation broadcast when I was 18. You spoke about unity through difference. You quoted Earth poets. Azara's scales shifted color, purple to deep blue. You know what that means. Embarrassment or interest. I memorized the spectrum. Savara's blade vanished into its handle. You're insane, both of you. Probably, Kale agreed, his heart hammered. But I'm also orphaned. No family to miss me. Genetic modifications make me potentially compatible for lifespan extension. It's in my medical file. He met Azhara's gaze. I've spent 6 years preparing for a chance to bridge our species. This just accelerates the timeline. She towered over him. Nearly 8 feet of scaled muscle and ancient power. You comprehend what you're offering? Our bonding rituals, our political complexity? You'd become target for every faction that opposes me. Sounds familiar. He managed a weak smile. I grew up in the Jakarta slums during the water wars. I know about targets. Azhara turned to her cousin. Leave. Tell the council I've accepted the treaty terms. Enthusiastically. They'll test him. Break him. Then I'll rebuild him. Something dangerous entered her voice. And anyone who harms what's mine will learn why I earned my throne in the blood trials. The blade handle disappeared into her sleeve. You're both mad. This won't work. We'll see, Kale said, surprised by his own certainty. The assassin departed through a wall section that hadn't existed moments before. The guards dematerialized. Kale found himself alone with a queen who'd just become his legal fiancée through a treaty he'd walked into blind. Azhara circled him slowly. Truth. Why request this assignment? Because when I was 18 and alone and convinced I'd die in the slums, I watched an alien queen quote Pablo Neruda and mean it. You made me think the universe might be bigger than survival. Her scales rippled, blue to silver. That's hope coloration, he said quietly. I studied that, too. So you did. She extended her hand, palm up, a gesture she'd learned from human diplomacy guides. 6 days to marry. Shall we attempt the impossible? Her skin felt like warm stone. I've been attempting impossible since I applied to the Corps with no credentials and a slum address. On her, it looked gentle. The satchel slipped from his other hand, forgotten. Somewhere in the palace, war factions and political enemies were already plotting. The council would demand tests. Earth's government would eventually realize what they'd done. But for now, in this moment, Kale felt something click into place. Like his entire chaotic life had been steering toward this precisely dangerous, perfectly impossible chance. I should warn you, Azhara said, leading him toward the inner chambers. Our bonding ceremony involves ritual combat. Of course it does. Kale laughed, slightly unhinged. Will you teach me? Every day we have. Her grip tightened fractionally. Protective, not possessive. The council meets in 4 rotations. They'll try to separate us before the wedding. Then we'd better make these days count. The door sealed behind them. Outside, the Valkyrie Ascendancy's political machine was already churning. Inside, a human courier and an alien queen began the most dangerous diplomatic negotiation of their lives, building something real from a contract meant to fail. Kale had studied Valkyrie poetry, history, combat philosophy. He'd memorized color patterns and ritual structures, but nothing had prepared him for the way Azhara looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, like she too had been waiting for someone to see past the throne. The treaty gave them 6 days. The universe would give him considerably less peace than that. But for the first time since childhood, Kale felt like he'd found something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. The real battle was just beginning. The training hall smelled like ozone and something organic Kale couldn't identify. Azhara moved through combat forms with liquid grace, each motion precise enough to slice atmosphere. He tried to mirror her, failed, rolled badly and earned a bruised shoulder against the crystalline floor. Again. She didn't look at him. The teaching stance. Formal, distant. Because the walls had sensors and the council was always watching. Kale stood, wincing. My balance is wrong. You're compensating for a spine structure I don't have. Now, she glanced over. But your reflexes are faster than expected. The genetic modifications, military grade, standard for diplomatic corps in contested zones. He tried the sequence again. Better. His foot still slipped. I won't be able to protect you in actual combat. You're not meant to. She paused mid-form. In 4 hours, the council convenes. They'll argue the marriage violates species compatibility laws. Does it? But law and politics rarely align. Her tail swept in a pattern he'd learned meant frustration. They'll demand you prove devotion. Valkyrie bonding requires the consort to demonstrate worthiness through 3 trials. What kind of trials? Combat. Traditionally against the monarch's previous suitors. Her scales flickered dark green. Shame. I've killed 4 challengers. You're telling me I have to fight people you've already beaten? You have to survive long enough for me to intervene without losing council support. She moved closer. In the hall's harsh light, he could see scarring along her neck ridges. They want you to fail, Kale. Earth's courier dying in ritual combat gives them excuse to void the treaty and blame human weakness. 3 days until the wedding. The council meeting was in 4 hours. So we need a strategy that proves I'm worthy without getting me killed? Impossible parameters? You keep saying that word. He managed to smile. I don't think you know what it means. She blinked, all 3 eyes in sequence. Valkyrie laughter. You quote human children's stories while discussing your potential death. Helps me think. He watched her continue the combat forms. What if I don't fight their way? Elaborate. But human combat doctrine emphasizes adaptability. His mind raced through scenarios. What are the exact trial parameters? Azar's expression sharpened. Survive 3 minutes against a champion. Draw blood from a council member's chosen warrior. Demonstrate willingness to die for your monarch. That last one's vague. Intentionally. It's interpretive. She stopped moving. What are you thinking? That I've been approaching this wrong. I'm not trying to become Valkyrie. I'm proving humanity has value. He met her gaze. Your people respect strength. Earth survived the Water Wars, the Mars Rebellion, first contact with 3 hostile species. We're still here.
The Council knows human history.
They know facts. They don't understand what those facts mean. Kale's pulse quickened. How much theater is allowed in the trials? Her scales shifted. Purple curiosity. Explain. But I can make them understand why you'd choose me anyway. He grabbed a practice blade from the wall rack. Teach me something flashy. Something that looks impressive even if it's not practical.
Understanding dawned in her expression.
You want to perform? I want to tell a story. One where the human consort isn't a weakness. He's a bridge. He spun the blade experimentally. Can you work with that? For the first time since the assassin's attack, Azara smiled with all 3 rows of teeth. You're gambling everything on symbolic gesture. I'm gambling everything on you having chosen well when you accepted this treaty. He returned the smile. Was I wrong? She moved faster than his eyes could track. One moment across the hall, the next pressed against him, claws resting gently on his shoulders. 4 hours. Can you learn enough to survive? I've survived worse odds. Liar. But her scales showed silver. Hope again. We begin now. The next 4 hours blurred. Azara taught him 7 sequences, each designed to showcase human flexibility against Valkyrie power. None would win a real fight. All would demonstrate that he understood the difference between strength and capability. Your kind moves like water, she observed during a brief rest. We move like stone. The contrast is aesthetically significant. Kale gulped from a hydration pack. His muscles screamed. Is that good? In art, yes. In politics? She hesitated. There's something you should know. Before we face the council. What? The treaty wasn't random? I requested human options specifically. Her voice lowered. 6 years ago, I accessed Earth's cultural exchange programs. I wanted to understand the species that survived its own planet trying to kill it. Including the documentary series about diplomatic corps training. She wouldn't meet his eyes. I saw your final examination. The scenario where you talked armed insurgents into surrendering by sharing food rations. That was broadcast? To academic circles. As an example of human conflict resolution. Since Sarah died a days of address. Now she looked at him. I've known your name for 3 years. When the council demanded an alliance marriage, I gave them a list of acceptable candidates. Your name was the only one on it. The training hall seemed to tilt. You chose me specifically? Yes. Why? Because you quoted poetry to calm frightened civilians. Because when given a weapon, you used words first. Her claws traced his shoulder carefully. I needed someone who'd see past the throne. Who'd understand that ruling means serving. Kale's throat burned. You could have told me. This way, you chose freely, even if the circumstances were aggressive. Aggressive is one word for state-sanctioned marriage. But he couldn't be angry. Not when she was looking at him like that. How long have you been planning this? Since I realized the council would eventually force my hand on alliance marriages, I had 3 choices. Marry a Valkyrie noble and cement existing power structures, marry an alien for political gain, or find someone who might actually... She trailed off. Actually what? Understand what it means to be lonely while surrounded by people. He thought of 18-year-old himself, watching her coronation from a slum apartment, feeling something stir that wasn't just admiration, recognition. We should prepare, Azara said quietly. The council won't wait. But Kale caught her hand before she could turn. Thank you for seeing me. Her scales rippled through 6 colors he hadn't learned yet. Thank you for being worth seeing. They had 90 minutes before the council convened. Kale used them to memorize every movement Azara taught him, knowing his life would depend on execution. She watched with an intensity that made his skin prickle. You're, afraid? She observed. Terrified, he agreed, but I've been terrified before, and terror means something matters enough to fear losing it. He executed a spinning deflection that almost worked. I haven't had that in a while. The training ended too soon. Servants arrived, crystalline beings who moved in perfect silence, and dressed him in ceremonial armor. It fit badly, designed for a Valkyrie frame, but the symbolism mattered. Human-wearing alien tradition. Azara wore full royal regalia, each piece representing conquered territories or resolved conflicts. She looked terrifying and magnificent. Kale felt like a child playing dress-up beside her. They'll try to break you with words before the physical trials, she warned as they walked toward the council chambers. Remember, showing emotion is strength in Valkyrie culture. Don't hide fear. Depends on the cause. Righteous fury is respected, petulance is not. The chamber doors loomed ahead, massive, carved with historical battles. Kale's heart hammered against his ribs. One more thing, Azara said. She stopped, turned, pulled him close with surprising gentleness. Whatever happens in there, know that I chose you. Not because the treaty demanded it. Because 6 years ago, a human who should have been nobody showed me what leadership could mean. Then she kissed him. A Valkyrie kiss, which involved careful positioning and temperature exchange in 3 seconds where Kale forgot how to breathe. The doors opened. The council waited. 12 Valkyrie elders, each radiating disapproval like heat. Bring in the human, the eldest commanded. Kale walked forward, alone. Azara remained at the chamber entrance. Protocol dictated separation during trial proceedings. The council formed a semicircle around him. He recognized Savara among them. The assassin now sat as representative for the war faction. Her expression promised violence. Kale Brennan Chen, the elder spoke. You stand accused of insufficiency. The Queen claims you as consort. We claim you as fraud. Then let me prove otherwise. His voice steadied. Name your trials. The elder's scales showed satisfied orange. Combat. Immediately. A panel opened. A Valkyrie warrior entered, massive, scarred, carrying weapons that hummed with lethal energy. Kale drew his practice blade. 3 minutes. He just had to survive 3 minutes. The warrior attacked. Kale moved like water, exactly as Azara taught. Not to win. To demonstrate that human and Valkyrie could move together, could complement rather than clash. The council watched in silence. At 2 minutes, the warrior's blade grazed his ribs. Blood welled, red against alien armor. At 2 minutes 30, Kale executed a spin that left him vulnerable but beautiful, a move that shouted trust in Azara's teaching. At 3 minutes exactly, Azara's voice rang out, Hold! The warrior stopped mid-strike. Kale collapsed to one knee, breathing hard, bleeding but alive. First trial complete, the elder said, sounding disappointed. Second trial. Draw blood from our champion. Kale understood. This time he had to attack. He met Azara's gaze across the chamber. She was shaking. Pride or fear, he couldn't tell. He stood, raised his blade, and did something no Valkyrie would expect. He spoke. I'm going to tell you a story, Kale said, loud enough to fill the chamber, about a species that shouldn't exist. The council stirred. This wasn't protocol. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us. Wrong gravity, wrong atmosphere, wrong everything. He moved slowly toward the warrior. We shouldn't have survived, but we're stubborn. We invented art to cope with mortality, poetry to cope with loneliness, love to cope with fear. Another step. And when we reached the stars, we didn't conquer. We adapted. Not at the warrior's body. At the weapon, his blade struck metal. Sparks flew. The warrior's hand shifted fractionally, and Kale's edge caught flesh. Purple blood welled. Just a drop. "Second trial complete," he said quietly. The chamber erupted in argument. Half the council protested. Savara stood, demanding disqualification. "The parameters," Kale said over the noise, "were draw blood. Not defeat, not kill. Draw blood." He met the elder's gaze. "I followed your rules exactly." The elder's scale shifted through 6 colors: anger, respect, frustration, consideration, acceptance, dark amusement. "Third trial," the elder finally said. "Demonstrate willingness to die for your queen." This trial had killed more suitors than combat. "How?" he asked. The elder gestured. A containment field activated. Kale found himself trapped, surrounded by energy that hummed against his skin. "Convince us," the elder said, "that your death would matter to her." She stood frozen, protocol forbidding intervention. "You want proof?" He laughed, slightly unhinged from blood loss and adrenaline. He pulled off the ceremonial armor, piece by piece, until he stood in just the simple clothes he'd worn when delivering the treaty. "I'm nobody," he said. "Orphan slum kid. Got into the diplomatic corps through stubbornness and luck." He met each council member's gaze. "By your standards, I'm worthless. Weak species, short lifespan, no political value. But your queen," Kale's voice strengthened. "She sees something you don't. Not potential, not political advantage. She sees what humanity means. Adaptation. Survival through change." The containment field's energy increased. Pain lanced through his nervous system. "You think my death wouldn't matter?" He gritted his teeth. "Watch her face. Right now. That's grief-forming. Because despite your tests and your politics and your certainty that humans are lesser, she chose me. Not for what I can give her, for who I am." He looked at his aura. Tears tracked down her scaled face, a physiological response Valkyrie only showed for true loss. "Disable the field," she commanded. "The trial isn't complete," the elder said. "Disposable it." Her voice carried harmonics that shook the chamber walls. The field died. Kale collapsed. Azara crossed the space in 2 strides, caught him before he hit the floor. "You insufferable human," she whispered. "You made me watch. Had to make them see." She held him like he was precious, in front of the entire council. "Breaking every protocol," the elder stood slowly. "The third trial is satisfied." "All 3 trials completed," another council member said, sounding shocked. Severa's blade materialized. "This is fraud. He manipulated." "He survived," Azhara snarled, still holding Kale. "He demonstrated capability, strategy, and devotion. Everything your candidates failed to do. And I chose him anyway." She stood, pulling Kale up with her. "The treaty is valid. The marriage proceeds. Any council member wishing to challenge this can face me in the blood trials."
No one moved?
The elder's scales showed resigned purple.
Mm-hmm.
"The council recognizes the bonding. Kale Brennan Chen, you are acknowledged as the Queen's consort select. Wedding proceeds in 3 planetary rotations." She carried Kale from the chamber, her strength making him feel weightless. "You're bleeding," she said once they reached her private quarters. "Worth it, idiot human." But her scales showed silver-blue-purple. Hope, affection, pride. Kale laughed, then winced. "Did I mention I'm terrified of your wedding traditions?" "Good, you should be." She set him on a healing platform. Medical equipment hummed to life. The ceremony involves ritual scarification, blood mingling, and public consummation of bonding. His eyes widened. "Public?" "Observed by the council to confirm genetic compatibility." She ran a claw gently down his face. "I can request privacy modifications." "Given your performance today, they might approve. How are you so calm about this?" "Reality is terrifying, but..." Her scales rippled. "Better than imagining." Kale watched Azhara move through the room, shedding royal regalia, becoming just herself. "Why didn't you tell me before the trials?" he asked. "That you'd chosen me, specifically? Would you have believed me? Or assumed manipulation?" "Probably the second." "Exactly." She returned to the platform, settling beside him with care for her size. "I needed you to choose this." "Really choose?" "The moment I walked into that chamber and saw someone trying to kill you." He reached for her hand. I just didn't realize you'd already chosen me years ago. Does it change things? Makes them better. Scarier, but better. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the palace complex hummed with activity, preparing for a wedding that would reshape political alliances across 3 sectors. 3 days, Azara said softly. Think we'll survive them? We've survived worse. When? Ask me in 3 days. She laughed. Full Velkari laughter that sounded like crystals singing. Then more seriously, thank you for being brave enough to be seen. Thank you for looking. The healing platform powered down. 3 days until a ceremony that would bind them legally, genetically, politically. 3 days for enemies to plot. 3 days to learn wedding traditions that involved public blood rites. But watching Azara's scales cycle through colors that meant happiness, Kale thought maybe impossible was just another word for worthwhile. The real battle had been surviving the trials. The real victory was everything that came after. They had 3 days to prepare, and a lifetime, however long his modified genetics allowed, to make this gamble pay off. For now, that was enough. The universe could wait. The wedding preparation chamber smelled like minerals and something sweet Kale couldn't identify. Traditional attendants, smaller Velkari with specialized training, moved around him with disturbing precision, painting patterns on his skin with substances that burned pleasantly. Each mark represented a human achievement: the first moon landing, surviving the water wars, peaceful first contact with the Zentari. This will scar, one attendant noted clinically. The bonding requires permanent marks. Kale watched violet ink sink into his forearm. How permanent? The queen bears matching patterns. The attendant scales showed neutral gray, professional distance. You understand what occurs during the ceremony? Blood exchange, public vows, genetic compatibility confirmation. He'd memorized the protocols. Understanding them emotionally was different. Then 3 days of isolation in the bonding chambers. During isolation, incompatible pairs experience rejection sickness. Death occurs in 40% of cases. His stomach clenched. Azara didn't mention that statistic. The queen likely assumed you knew. The attendant paused work. Human genetic modification improves survival odds to 70%. Still dangerous. What happens if I die during bonding? The queen returns to the council unmarried. The treaty fails. Previous hostilities resume. The attendant resumed painting. Your death would cost approximately 14 billion lives across both territories. No pressure, Kale thought grimly. The chamber doors opened. Savara entered, still wearing her council robes. The attendant stiffened but didn't leave. Checking the merchandise? Kale asked. Ensuring you understand the stakes. She circled him slowly. You performed well at the trials. Too well. It makes certain factions nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. So do overconfident humans. She stopped in front of him. I tried to kill Azara because I believe our species needs strength, not sentiment. But I understand duty. Her blade handle emerged from her sleeve. The attendants scattered. Which is why I'm here to help you survive what's coming. Kale's pulse jumped. What? The bonding chamber has been compromised? 3 council members paid maintenance staff to introduce genetic modifiers into the atmosphere. Savara's scales showed dark red. Rage. They're hoping to trigger rejection sickness. Kill you. Blame natural incompatibility. Why tell me? Because I challenged Azhara openly. I respected her enough to face her directly. The blade spun in her hand, almost casual. What they're doing is cowardice. I won't tolerate it. Kale studied her. What do you want in return? Accept this. If you survive, if you become consort, don't make Azhara weak. We need her sharp. Savara's third eye focused on him with unnerving intensity. Can you do that? I never planned to dull her. She chose me because I'm different, not less. Something shifted in Savara's expression. Perhaps you'll survive after all. She tossed him a small crystal. Atmospheric purifier. Activate it when the bonding door seals. It'll neutralize the modifiers. Why not just report them to Azhara? Because she needs to believe the bonding succeeded naturally. If she knows about sabotage, she'll purge half the council. We can't afford that instability. Savara moved toward the door. Survive, human. Then we'll discuss how to handle traitors properly. Kale stared at the crystal, his mind racing. 3 days until the ceremony. Someone wanted him dead badly enough to risk angering the queen, and the assassin who'd tried to kill her was now his unlikely ally. The attendants returned cautiously. "We heard nothing," one said. "Appreciated." The painting resumed. Cale felt each mark settle into his skin like tiny brands. By the time they finished, his torso and arms bore a map of human history in violet and gold. He barely recognized himself in the reflective walls. A different door opened. Azara entered, and the attendants vanished instantly. She wore traditional pre-bonding robes, sheer enough to show the matching patterns painted on her scales. The effect was breathtaking. Terrifying, both. "They've prepared you well," she observed. "I look like a history text. You look like someone worth binding to." She circled him the way Savara had, but with entirely different energy. "How are you feeling? Terrified?" "You? Same?" Her claws traced one of the painted marks carefully. "I should have told you about the rejection sickness statistics. Your assassin cousin mentioned them." "Savara was here?" "Bringing warnings about sabotage." He explained quickly: the compromised bonding chamber, the atmospheric modifiers, the crystal purifier. She said you can't know officially. "She's correct." Politically savvy of her. "Are we really doing this? Bonding in a sabotaged chamber? With protections now?" She examined the crystal. "This will work. The question is whether you still want to proceed." "You're asking now? After the trials, the painting, the political maneuvering?" "I'm asking because you deserve the choice, real choice." She met his gaze with all three eyes. "If you refuse, I'll claim diplomatic incompatibility. Void the treaty differently. Find another solution." "Costing how many lives?" She set the crystal aside. "But I won't force you into lethal risk without consent. Whatever led to this moment, you're standing here because I manipulated circumstances." "You deserve agency." Her scales felt warm. "You chose me 6 years ago. I chose you the moment I saw you refuse to flinch from that quantum blade." He squeezed gently. "I'm scared. But I'm also sure." Her scales cycled through colors, relief, affection, something deeper he didn't have words for. "The ceremony begins at sunset. That's 4 hours. We shouldn't see each other until then." "Why not?" "Also," she hesitated, "I need time to prepare mentally for the possibility that the bonding fails." His chest tightened. "It won't, but I can believe it." He pulled her closer, navigating the height difference awkwardly. "We're both gamblers. Let's bet on ourselves." She kissed him, Valkyrie style, careful and intense. When they separated, her scales showed silver so bright it almost glowed. 4 hours, she whispered. "Don't be late." "Wouldn't dream of it." She left. Cale sat alone with painted skin and a crystal that might save his life. 4 hours until he married an alien queen in front of a council that wanted him dead. His hands shook. He forced them still. The attendants returned with ceremonial armor, lighter than the trial gear, designed to be removed easily during the bonding. It fit better now, adjusted to his frame. He looked at his reflection. Human wearing alien tradition, covered in marks that honored both species. "You'll do," one attendant said, surprising him with approval. "Thanks. I think. Don't die and embarrass her." Cale laughed despite his nerves. "I'll try." Other Valkyrie watched from alcoves and doorways. Some scales showed orange hostility. Others flickered curious purple. "They're betting on your survival," an attendant explained. "Current odds are 40-60 against." Comforting. "The Queen bet her personal treasury on your success." That shifted odds significantly. That information settled somewhere warm in his chest. Azara believed in him enough to wager everything. The ceremonial hall loomed ahead. Massive. Ancient. Designed to hold thousands. Through translucent doors, Cale saw the space already filling, council members, diplomatic observers from a dozen species, crystalline guards lining the walls. "Last chance to run," an attendant said. "Where would I go?" "Nowhere. But humans appreciate symbolic choices. Then I symbolically choose to walk through those doors. May your genetics prove compatible." Sound washed over him. Harmonic music that vibrated his bones, thousands of voices in languages he didn't speak. The crowd parted. A path stretched toward a raised platform where Azhara waited. She wore full royal regalia combined with bonding robes. The effect was stunning. Lethal grace meeting vulnerable hope. Cale walked forward. Each step felt weighted with history. Human marrying Valkyrie, treaty marriage becoming something real, the impossible made manifest. He reached the platform. Azhara extended her hand. He took it. The eldest council member presided. We gather to witness bonding. Queen Azara of the Third Radiance and Kale Brennan Chen, human consort select. The harmonics in her voice made his teeth ache. Speak your vows. Azara went first, in Valkyrie. Complex phrases about duty, devotion, territorial defense. Then, I claim this human as mine. I will protect his life above my own. I will honor his choices as equal to my decrees. I will cherish his difference as strength, not weakness. The crowd murmured. Claiming language was old. Sacred. Kale's turn. He'd memorized Valkyrie phrases, practiced pronunciation. I accept this claim. I offer my life to her protection. I honor her burden of leadership. I promise to be her bridge to humanity, her reminder of possibilities, her partner in the impossible. The elder's scales showed surprised purple. You speak well, human. I had 6 years to learn. Azara's grip tightened fractionally. The blood exchange, the elder commanded. Attendants brought ceremonial blades, sharp enough to split atoms. Kale tried not to think about what came next. Azara took her blade, cut her palm precisely. Purple blood welled. She offered her hand. Kale copied the motion. Red blood mixed with purple where their palms met. Genetic compatibility begins, the elder intoned. Pain exploded through Kale's nervous system. His blood burning, cells reshaping, something foreign integrating with something familiar. He heard himself cry out. Couldn't stop it. Azara held him steady. Breathe. Let it happen. He tried. The pain crested, held, slowly receded. When he could focus again, the mixed blood on their joined hands had turned silver. Compatible, the elder announced, sounding surprised. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half protesting. The bonding chamber, Azara said, looking only at Kale. Ready? No, but let's go anyway. Behind them, the crowd's noise faded. Ahead, the bonding chamber waited. 3 days of isolation where genetics would either accept or reject their union. The chamber was beautiful. Bioluminescent walls, adaptive temperature. Supplies for 3 days. And, Kale knew, atmospheric modifiers designed to kill him. I love you, he said suddenly. I should have said that before. Azara's scales cycled through 10 colors. I've loved you since I watched you share food with enemies. I just didn't have words for it yet. They entered. The door sealed behind them with finality. Kale activated the crystal purifier. Subtle hum. The air quality shifted. Now we wait, Azara said, and hope our genetics agree with our hearts. Tell me about the first time you saw that documentary. About the diplomatic corps training? She settled beside him, careful of her size. You really want to hear this? We have 3 days. I want to hear everything.
About watching human resilience and feeling something shift. About researching Earth culture obsessively.
About the moment she realized humanity's strength wasn't physical but adaptive. Kale listened and felt rejection sickness hover at the edges of his awareness. Nausea, fever, cellular confusion. But the purifier worked. Slowly, the sickness receded. He shared his own story. Growing up in the slums. Watching her coronation. Deciding to survive long enough to see what else the universe held. We were both lonely, Azara observed. We were both looking for connection in places that shouldn't have worked. Night cycle came. Automated lights dimmed. They lay together, learning the shape of compatible genetics and incompatible anatomy, finding ways to fit. If this fails, Kale whispered. If I die tomorrow, don't. You gave me the most interesting 6 days of my life. Insufficient. Her claws traced patterns on his skin. You deserve decades, centuries if the lifespan modifications work. Then let's survive for that. Day 2 brought worse rejection sickness. Kale's temperature spiked. Azara held him through shaking fits, monitoring his vital signs, adjusting the chamber's environment. Talk to me, he managed. Distract me. She told stories about growing up royal. The weight of expectations. The loneliness of power. How she'd envied species that chose their partners freely. You chose me, Kale said. That's pretty free. I stacked the deck. Manipulated circumstances. But you let me say no. That's the important part. Day 3. The sickness peaked. Kale hallucinated conversations with people from his past. Azar had never left his side. When the fever finally broke, he found her curled around him protectively, scales showing exhausted gray. "Hi," he whispered. "You survived." She sounded shocked. "Told you I would. Impossible odds. My specialty." The chamber door unsealed. "Timing perfect, 3 days exactly." Attendants waited outside with medical equipment. Scans confirmed it. Genetic bonding successful. Rejection sickness overcome. Kale's modified cells had integrated Valkyrie markers. He'd live longer now. "Much longer. How much longer?" he asked the medical attendant. "Unknown. Possibly centuries." Unprecedented case. Azara's scales showed silver, blue, purple, gold, colors Kale had never seen together. "You're mine. For centuries." Was planning on it anyway. The council convened for formal recognition. This time, no trials. Just acknowledgement. Kale Brennan Chen, royal consort. Married. Bonded. Official. Savara approached afterward. "You survived." "Thanks to your warning. We have traitors to catch." "We?" Kale looked at Azhara. "The three of us," the queen agreed. "Savara acts as internal security. You provide human perspective. I handle politics." "What happened to wanting me dead?" Kale asked Savara. "You proved stronger than anticipated. Wasting strength is offensive." Her blade handle disappeared. "Besides, anyone who survives what you did earns respect." Identified the 3 council members who'd sabotaged the bonding chamber, built cases, gathered evidence. Kale watched Azara work, brilliant, ruthless when necessary, merciful when possible. She gave the traitors 1 chance, exile or trial. 2 chose exile. 1 chose trial and lost. "Politics is brutal," Kale observed. "Leadership requires hard choices." She held him close. "I'm glad you're here to remind me of gentler options." "I'm not always gentle." "No, but you lead with compassion. I lead with duty. Together," her scales flickered thoughtfully, "together we're balanced." The treaty formalized. Earth's defensive fleet integrated with Valkyrie border patrols. Trade routes opened. Cultural exchanges began. Kale became a bridge, translating not just language but intent, helping both species understand each other. Months passed. Then years. The slum kid turned diplomat turned royal consort found his rhythm. Learning Valkyrie politics, teaching Earth customs. Standing beside a queen who'd gambled everything on seeing him. One night, 5 years after the wedding, Azara found him on the observation deck watching Earth's sun, small and distant from Valkyrie space. "Homesick?" she asked. "Sometimes. But home's changed." He pulled her close. "It's wherever you are." "I do." Her scales showed colors he'd learned meant happiness. Deep, genuine happiness. "Thank you for surviving. For choosing this. Thank you for seeing me when I was nobody. You were never nobody. You were just waiting to be seen." They stood together watching stars. Around them, 2 species that should have clashed instead learned cooperation. All because a queen had gambled on impossible odds, and a human had been brave enough to bet alongside her. The universe was vast, but in this moment on this deck it felt perfectly sized for 2 people who'd found each other across impossible distance. Kale thought about 18-year-old him, watching a coronation broadcast, feeling something shift. If he could tell that kid anything, it would be this. Keep surviving. Keep hoping. The universe is strange and dangerous and occasionally impossibly kind. "I love you," he said. "I know," Azara replied. "You've shown me every day." "For centuries more?" "At minimum." Treaties held. Peace, fragile but growing, spread across contested territories. And 2 people who should have been impossible found ways to make each other real. The story didn't end there. Life rarely does. But it was a beginning worth every impossible risk they'd taken to achieve it. Together they watched the stars and planned for centuries they'd earn the right to see.